Well, hey there, parents. In this video, we're going to talk a little bit more about something we introduced in the last video called flex parenting. And I'm here in the studio with my beautiful wife, Tracy. And so, Tracy, before we get into it again, we talked about this in the last video, but parenting is easy, right? Piece of cake?
I wish.
Yeah.
No, parenting is hard and we need help.
Yeah. And so our tools at FLEXTALK.org are designed to really put a practical tool in the hands of parents so that they can have meaningful conversations with their kids.
Right.
Okay, so we're going to talk today about 3 really important principles. This is kind of the philosophy of FLEXTALK parenting, because there are these 3 principles. I think if a parent really can understand this and they understand why a conversational culture is so important and how our tools help create that.
Yeah.
So talk us through this first principle. The first principle is called discovery.
Yeah, so the discovery principle is all about your kids discovering your values, truth, and being able to apply it to their own lives, that they actually understand it at their own level.
And they discover it through conversation.
Right.
As opposed to the alternative, which most parents just instinctively do, which is
we just cram it down their throats and we lecture and talk at our kids. If we can get it in a conversational culture, our kids, through conversation, start to discover what you want them to discover, but they feel a part of it and not just being yelled at or talked to or...
Yeah, preached at.
Preached at is probably a better word.
So discovery allows them to internalize it, wrestle with it, instead of just, I'm doing this because mom and dad say. Now, that's not a bad reason.
Right.
We want kids that are obedient, but they begin to actually embrace it for themselves.
Yes.
So, for example, let's say that we're teaching our 7-year-old kid how to the importance of not lying, right? So we find a topic on the site about lying.
Right.
We watch the video together.
Right.
And a kid's explaining it, and we're sitting there with our kid learning together, exploring this thing together. And now what do we do next as parents?
So now then in the question time, we talk to our kids like, okay, so let's think about that specific instance that happened lately where they were caught lying.
Yeah.
So what's the problem with lying? What do we learn that lying does? And then talk about the consequences that they had for that particular lie. And what it does is it creates an understanding at a kid level why lying is bad. And okay, so lying's bad, and when I lie, there's consequences, and here's why. And they start to understand it and start to think about it in terms of, do I want to be a liar?
Yeah, right. And they're saying it, they're articulating it, and the kids on the videos articulate, not just mom and dad.
Right.
Because typically, mom and dad do all the lecturing, kid just sits and listens, and it's going in one ear, out the other.
Right.
And that's why a conversational approach is really helpful.
Right, which leads to the second principle that's really important in this. So it's not just about kids discovering the value or what you're wanting them, the truth you want them to discover. It's getting them to start taking ownership of that and to recognize that their own choices, that more and more mom and dad can't control the choices that you make. So you have to learn how to take ownership for your own choices and to make a decision to say, I don't want to be a liar. So that means I need to always tell the truth.
Yeah.
Even if it means sometimes getting in trouble because I did something I wasn't supposed to do.
Yeah, and the conversational approach helps a kid to take ownership because, again, it's not just I'm passively listening to mom and dad yell at me about not lying, but I'm actively, internalizing it. And I'm being held accountable for it.
Right.
I'm saying it back. I remember with our kids when we finally started to really put this into practice, we sort of like brought duct tape to our conversations. We said, whoa, wait, we're doing all the work right now. We're the ones getting fired up. We're the ones getting our blood pressure is rising. We stopped. We said, well, no, we're going to have our kids take ownership. So we made them articulate, why'd you do that? What were you thinking?
Right.
We had them, they were being held accountable for their thought process, the way they approached it.
Right.
We made them do more of the work than us. And that's what the conversations help too. It helps them to take ownership for it.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yes. Because that's ultimately the goal. And as your kids get older, it needs to be that they're thinking about it in terms of, this is in the end, it's going to be my life. And I'm going to have to own the choices that I make.
And that's really where the third principle ultimately comes in. It's the empowerment principle. The goal is to empower our kids to grow up and be eventually the parents And they're going to be doing the same thing with our grandkids, their kids. We're empowering them to embrace these things and live according to these values.
Yes.
And so, maybe not just when they're parents, but maybe later on they'll be mentors, maybe they'll be student mentors with the tools. And so we're empowering them to be leaders.
Right.
Really?
Which I think at the end of the day, our kids, the more we can get buy-in that our kids have a role to play in the family.
Yeah.
And your role as a kid's different than the role of a parent, but everyone plays their part. And the more you can teach your kids that early on, to discover what matters, to have principles that they live by and values, to own the choices that they make and really learn how to be, a good person that makes good choices. And then that empowerment thing is that they go out into the world and they make their contribution. That creates more buy-in, and it's just a better thing all the way around than if they just feel like I'm just like this little robot and you just tell me what to do and then I go to the next phase of life and there's no investment in that.
Yeah, and parents, let me just say that this is, even though this is the philosophy behind it, it's more than philosophy, because our kids are almost 18 and 15, and they have discovered so many values and internalized them. They've taken ownership of them, and they've been empowered. They're actually mentoring other younger students and using the tools, using the methods. So flex parenting is something that we've done. Many other parents and couples have done this, and it really is a simple way to raise up kids who are healthy and productive.
Right. And who want to make a difference in the world, which is only going to help our world to be a better place.
Yeah. So again, parents, use this. If you're talking about this with a mentor or in a workshop or in a group, use those questions below to unpack these 3 principles. And then we'll see you in the next video as we continue to talk about FLEXTALK and parenting and raising up kids who are awesome.